And I'm the co-coordinator at CHADD Nassau County. Here we welcome everyone. We're a protected environment in terms of coming in and sharing information about the ADHD or ADD community. We understand that there are needs out there, that parents need help and adults need help as well, and we're here to support you with various tools and resources. We have a board that has specialty in terms of being out there in the community, feet on the ground, and then we also have folks like myself who is a caregiver of a child with ADHD. So we welcome you all to come in and check us out. Please check on Parent to Parent. We advertise there for our monthly meetings, and this evening we're going to have Mindy Ross-Knaster. She's a special needs advocate, and she's going to tell you all about your rights and privileges in terms of getting your child the resources that they need to be successful. Thank you and have a great day.
I am, and I'm going to give you understand that I am not the average speaker. I will be in your face. I will be right with you because I've been on your journey. Everyone has a different journey in life, and I've learned the hard way that each person, how they handle the journey is what makes the difference. My name is Mindy Ross-Knaster. I am an advocate. I am an educational advocate. I work with families all over Nassau, Suffolk, New York City. I make sure that parents are empowered with the ability to understand the process of special education, to understand the laws, and understand what your role is in this law. Because in all honesty, you are empowered by the IDEA. The IDEA is the Individuals with Disability Educational Act. And in 2017, it was updated to make sure that parents' rights are very strong. And when I say strong, I mean strong. You have the right to say, I don't agree with you at a meeting, and it matters. They are not allowed to predetermine something at a meeting without your ability to say, where did you get this from? It's not there. Show it to me in the scores, and then we can start talking. So I'm going to take a step back and explain a little bit about me. I have been in the field of education since 1983. I started out originally teaching Head Start, little ones, 3 and 4 year olds, and I noticed that I had an affinity for kids who struggled more. When you see that, you say, okay, how much do you know is struggling? I didn't know how to recognize it back then, but I automatically knew which kids needed more help. And I didn't know why I knew it, because I didn't have that background yet to understand special education. My bachelor's degree was in early childhood education. I understood little kids. And then I decided I'm going to go into the city to be a teacher. Now my first class, which my license was from K to 2, they put me into a 2nd grade class with 28 kids, of which all of them were waiting for the parent to sign so they can get eligibility. Now I hope you understand what eligibility is. That means that they would get an IEP. There's 2 different areas, 2 different documents that can be made for a child who has special needs. One is called a 504, that is a medical plan. And most of you, when you have a child with ADHD, is very familiar with the medical plan. The second one is for an IEP. What's the difference? An IEP, you have to have the differentiation between scores. That means that a child has to have strengths and weaknesses. And the differences between the 2 talks about a disability. So how does this affect all of us? Not only am I a teacher, retired, but I also did educational evaluation, so the testing that they do for each of these kids, I am very familiar with, and how to read it, and how to learn the scores, what the percentiles are, as compared to the regular scaled numbers. That is a big difference. My bachelor's is in early childhood. My master's is in special education. And then I decided, it wasn't enough to have one master's degree. So I decided to continue on, and I got a second master's degree in child and adolescent psychology. And I loved the fact that I can gain more understanding in the children and be able to understand where they're at and what they're dealing with. So going into the field of special education, I loved it, and I still love it to this day. I don't teach anymore, but when I was teaching about 10 years, my oldest son was born. And that's when I realized I was not on a cruise ship to Europe or to any kind of luxurious resort. I was on a cruise ship to Greenland. It's not so bad, beautiful area, right? But it was a different kind of a journey. My sons are both high-functioning autistic. And it's very interesting when I say that because my younger son not only was given that classification, but he also has ADHD. Imagine a child who has ADHD and autism, and they can't handle things with sensory integration. Everything is overwhelming, and he can't sit still. By the way, do you all know what code Adam is in the stores? Do you know what code Adam is? What's code Adam?
No, I don't.
It's okay.
If somebody is run away or somebody.
Run away, it's a missing child, that's what it means. In most department stores, code Adam means child missing. And so they lock down the building. I've learned that the hard way, more than once. So it's all relative. I've been in many of your shoes. I've had my son wandering an entire store and found him in the middle of a garbage area. Or even better, when my son, he was just starting to really move quickly. I never had a chance to sit down in temple. I would go into temple and try to pray, and I'd have to have a leash on me to keep my son with me, because God forbid I should take my eye off him for 2 seconds, he'd be out that door somewhere else. So we made a deal. The custodian of our temple and I became best friends. He took my Daniel under his wing, and he says, I'm giving you 25 minutes to pray. Then you can come and get him. And I would look at him and I said, you sure? He said, don't worry, I'll put him to work. And he would give him little things to do that occupied him. You can imagine how easy that was for me to have some time to just be able to do something else besides running after him. So as an advocate, what I learned the most is I had to be the person who knew what was going on. In education years ago, special ed teachers were taught about what was called then PL 42, Public Law 42. You learned what it was, you learned the history of it, and you learned how to use it to follow the law in your classroom. Today we have the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Educational Act. And that IDEA, which now has become the IDEIA, which is the addendum to the IDEA, is your rights. Now, how does it show your rights? If you look on the paper that I gave you, you will see I wrote down there are 10 major rights that parents have. And it's really important for you to be aware of those rights. The number one thing is you are an active participant in that meeting. That means you have as much say as they do. You are an equal partner. You do not have less of a voice. You know your child by living with your child. You know what he's like when he wakes up in the morning or she wakes up in the morning. You know what they're like when they're falling off to go to sleep. And when the meds are not working or the meds are working. Every child's an individual. Every child has different reactions, different things. Whether they have a medicine or they don't. I can tell you that I was listening before someone was talking about Vyvanse and this medication and that one, and I'm laughing because we went that route. We tried the medications, they didn't work for my son. And we ended up doing a more holistic approach. But it mattered, every child is an individual. Some kids respond to the medicines, some kids don't. And that's what we are aware of, the positives and negatives of the medication, but also looking at other options to see what works for your child. Because the doctors don't look at the other options. They only look at what's available pharmaceutically. And so as a parent looking at it, I didn't look at just the pharmaceuticals. I tried that first. And when it didn't work for my son, I had to find other ways. But more importantly, I had to be able to explain this to the school system. How do you explain to the school that my son's not on medicine anymore because he's not doing well on the meds? Or a medicine's failing him. So what do? How do you tell them? Well, the first thing I can tell you is, I never told them when he was on a med unless he was taking it during school days. Because I found that they have too much knowledge is not always good for the child. Because that is one of the things that school districts manipulate parents often about, oh, he's not on his meds today. I'm sure that many of you have heard that. A child who is turning around and saying, did you give him his medication? My answer would always be yes. And I never told them what kind of medicine, and I never told them why. Because honestly, that's not their business. Unless you want it on the IEP, you don't have to put it there. That's your choice. That's a matter of HIPAA and confidentiality. And it's your decision what to tell them. But I want to get back to the IDA and your rights, because that's really important. It's really why I'm here today. Parents have a right to fully participate in a CSE meeting. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean you're just there for his voice? No, it doesn't mean that. It means that if you are not given all the paperwork prior to the meeting, you can shut down that meeting and go back a different day. That is the truth. You have a right to be fully participant. And when you're not fully able to participate, the meeting is over. As far as I'm concerned, I've shut down meetings and they've waited for me to read reports because I refused to start that meeting until I was fully informed prior. I had a school psychologist say to me, oh, we can talk while you're reading. I said, absolutely not. This meeting is tabled if we're going to do that. They look at me like I'm, what? But everybody's here. I don't care. You chose not to provide me with the same information that everyone at this table had before this meeting. That's your responsibility to get it to me. And how does the law help us? Well, very simply. Because it says that you have that right to fully participate, if you are not given paperwork prior to the meeting, you can actually do a due process complaint on that alone, because they're not letting the parent participate. How can I participate if I don't know everything? I was at a meeting where the school psychologist hands me a new testing that was just done for my son. And my answer to her was, I think we need to table this meeting. She looked at me like I was crazy. I said, nope. I had gone to my director of special ed, and I live in Lynbrook, and said to her, I will not go to a meeting unless I have had my paperwork 2 days, business days prior to the meeting. Well, sometimes it's not ready in advance. Well, then I'm not having a meeting that day. Why not? Because I can't read a report at a meeting, and 2 days is not enough. If you're going to give it to me the day before the meeting, how do you know I don't have a family emergency and I can't read it right then? I need at least 2 business days. Well, there's no law that says you have to have it. If you want me to fully participate, the law says that I'm entitled to the same documentation as everyone else at that meeting. That's what full participation means. And you have a right to table that meeting. Table means stopping the meeting and reconvening at another date. Isn't that amazing how the rights of we're powerful? We have that right. And you should take and use that power, because they're going to tell you, oh, we'll go ahead. Don't worry, I'll explain it now. Absolutely not. Don't lose your upper hand, because I know it sounds awful, but this is not for them, their child. This is for them a job, For many of the people at that committee, they are not there because they love your child. They are there to do their job, and they're there to see if they can cut budgets. And I know it sounds awful, but it is the truth. We're living in a day and a time where the budgets have been cut, and special education is suffering for it. And there's too many districts who are not giving what they should be or minimalizing it. Unfortunately for them, the law is not in their favor. There have been cases in the recent couple of years. One is called Andrew and the Board of Ed. And Andrew was a child who was given minimalist education. He made minimal progress over a period of time. And the Supreme Court ruled that Andrew, it is not enough to do minimal, that you have to show significant progress. Now, it doesn't mean maximum progress. It means you have to show a progress that makes sense, that a child is making strides to make the distance between the general ed population and the special ed child to be at least equitable. It doesn't have to be equal, but it has to be equitable. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean a child has a right to access curriculum. Does that sound like something you've heard before? That your child has a right to access all curriculum? Well, I know that if a child can do trigonometry, even with assistance, they have a right to take that class. If your child is doing wonderful in social studies and can take AP US History, that child should be taking AP US History, and even if he needs resource room in that subject area. There's absolutely no right to stop a child from taking a particular class because I don't have a special class for him for that subject. So put someone in or work with him, either a resource or a SETS provider, that's the special education teacher support services, or a consultant teacher who can help him break down curriculum and access the curriculum. If a child's capable of it, there's no reason why they can't. They may need some help. Maybe they need to break it down a little bit further. Maybe they need to just have that person help them organize their materials. I don't know your child. I can only tell you from my experience. One of the things I learned as an advocate is that we have a lot of power. And it sounds absurd because everybody in this room should be called an advocate. Your child matters, and you are the main person to be able to fight for your child. So how does that covered by the law? Really simple. Because you have rights, and I outlined them in this brochure so that I didn't have to go through each one. You have the right to do certain things that they can't deny you. If they do, you have the right to due process. Does everybody know what due process is? Does anybody know what due process is? I'm sorry?
Legal.
It's legal. It's a big deal to do due process, and it can come at a very big part or it can come at a minimal. There's two parts to due process. The one is a mediation, where you can request an impartial mediator to decide between the district and you. And do they have to follow it? They do by law have to at least try to follow it to a certain extent. If they don't, you can go forward to a legal process called the due process hearing. And that becomes much more cumbersome. That requires, in Nassau County, it requires a lawyer. In New York City, it doesn't. There are more advocates in New York City doing due process complaints than anywhere else in New York. Because the district doesn't fight the same way there. There's too many kids. There's too much of the problem. And so they give a little more leniency. In the smaller districts, they know their people. They know what they can do and what they can't. So they step just so far without backing off. If you are knowledgeable and you can get yourself knowledgeable about the laws of the IDEA, it stops them from going forward, because once they know that I have this right and I'm invoking it now, all of a sudden the director will back off. Because they know that a parent who has the knowledge has the power to stop them from the shenanigans that they pull. And one of the biggest shenanigans I hear all the time is, well, your child is testing average. And the teachers are all telling me that everything is good. But the report card says he's on a 2 and has major issues decoding. Why is the teacher telling the teen that he's doing okay if the report card's saying something else? I hope you know that they've been told to say that, right? They've been told, don't make waves. This is a child we don't have to give services to. Now, what if your child is just having some behaviors and can be kept in the general classroom with a little support? That's usually the minimal amount of services they can get, and for some kids that's enough. And that's great, because you don't want them in a self-contained class if they can avoid it. But what if a child is not doing well in the general ed, and the ICT class, the inclusion class, is watering down some of the curriculum for him or her and not doing that job as efficiently as they should be? Tutors don't always help our kids. Sometimes the tutors just mask a problem. And I tell parents all the time, if your child is coming home and struggling with the homework and can't do homework alone, and you're paying for tutors every single time for them to be doing their work, stop the tutors for 1 month. As much as it hurts you, stop it. Because once the district sees he's not doing the work, once the district sees that what you're saying is accurate, they don't have a leg to stand on. Because you're going to go if you come to the committee and you're going to say to them, look, you told me that I had to get tutors, so I did, and my son was doing his homework with the tutors. It's costing me a fortune. Well, guess what? You pay for it. And until you decide that he needs services, I'm not paying for tutors. I'm not required to by law. I had one parent who told me, I can't do that. I'm going to harm my child. And my answer to her was, you will not harm him for 4 weeks. You will actually be helping him for his lifetime. Because if he's struggling now, what's going to happen when he gets into a harder grade? This was a 3rd grade student. In 4th grade, she didn't get him tutors the first couple of months. And they finally gave him services because she realized I was right. It's what you show the district that what matters, not what you see yourself. If they can't see it, or the teachers are not telling the truth, which is not an unusual situation, then how do they know what his real abilities are? Now, I've said a lot, and I know there is a lot to say, but I would really like to try to get some questions from you guys and see what I can do to help, to answer it. I try to keep your questions as general as possible. I don't want to break confidentiality, because that's a big part of the law, is that your information and your child's information should not be spread around to the world. That's part of your rights. Yes?
Is it the same in every state?
No. Yeah, yes and no. New York has the best services of any state in the United States. And that is because we've had, up until the last couple of years, we've had, the legislator has backed us tremendously and kept our services to be the maximum. It is changing, especially when it gets to adult services, but for adults who have developmental disabilities or intellectual disabilities. There's been a lot of cutbacks on the kids who need it the most, and there's a lot of fighting that's going on right now. Legislature, I don't know if you've ever heard of the group Soyin, but Soyin is Saving Our Young Adult Network, and it's parents who gather together. Every one of them has a child with a disability. whether it's autism or it's any of the above, and I'm not gonna get through the whole list. We are now visiting legislature, and we've been to, we actually had a conference 2 days ago with the director of OPWDD. We went up to Westchester. He was having a conference there, and we kind of butted in. And I do a lot of that kind of work too, because it's important for not only my kids, but all kids, to make sure that every child has what they need to be able to be independent adults. And so I'm very active in various organizations to be able to help all kids and all adults. So I do a lot of that. I also do guardianship for families that need it. That's a matter of just guiding you through the process. New York State, you do not have to have an attorney to do guardianship. It is a choice. It makes it easier, by the way, but it doesn't mean it's any better one way or another. As long as you have someone who can guide you, you can do it. Yes.
I'm sorry. I have a friend who we speak, she's not in this state, but her son was just diagnosed with autism. She cannot get an IEP, or she cannot get in 504 because they're saying he's not, I don't know if it's a doctor or what's going on, but they're not giving him these special classes, and I don't know what to do for her because I keep telling her, yeah, you have to demand it, and she's like, I can't. And you're speaking about this, who does she go to? What's her next step?
She can start with a special education advocate or a lawyer that deals in special ed from her state.
She doesn't have the money to do that.
Some lawyers will, there are some lawyers out there, especially for that kind of a
Yeah,
situation.
she's a single mom, so it's hard, but
Has she contacted the advocacy groups in her state?
I don't know.
Okay, the first step I would say is to see if there's advocacy groups in that state. There are different rules in different states.
Right.
They all have the same basic premise though, and autism is not something you are allowed to ignore. And the reason they do this is because autism brings and takes a lot of the money from that district. So they try to minimize the kids that are given that classification. Because with autism diagnosis, they now have parent training, and different districts provide parent training different ways. They're also entitled to a behaviorist to come and work on behaviors. And by the way, this is not New York law, this is all law, all states. She has to fight for those things. And she's entitled to them. And I'm not just talking New York, because there are certain principles that are in all states. There are other things that are just specific to New York. Yes.
Speaking of, I know I helped somebody out of state also at one point, but if you suspect your child has an issue, could you tell us what to do, how to go, if the teacher says he's doing fine, he doesn't need, isn't there such a thing as writing, I suspect my child has a problem
Well,
and I
it's not,
demand
that's the way
an
they need to
evaluation?
do it is this. I am concerned with my child's learning ability. I am requesting a formal evaluation to see what my son's or daughter's progress is educationally and whether or not they need extra help in the special ed forum. And it doesn't matter if you word exactly like that, but do something similar. As long as you're saying, I am requesting, and I'll tell you another thing you should put in that letter. Make sure in that letter it says the word, I hereby consent to the evaluations. It will speed up the process. Do you know why I say that? The word consent is a word that has been bandied about too many times by districts. Oh, I have to have my own consent. No. If a parent puts it in a letter that I am requesting an evaluation for my child and I hereby consent to these evaluations, they've already given and granted consent in that letter. They don't have to sign a second consent letter. And a social worker or psychologist or an administrator cannot tell you no. They can try to persuade you. Oh, he doesn't really need it. Maybe we'll do some RTI, some reading intervention in the building. Or maybe, you know what, I'll check a look at him tomorrow and see how he's doing. You don't have to do an eval. Don't let them fool you. That's a way to avoid the whole process. And many kids, when they're not giving them that eval, they're taking away your rights to ask for it. Because in the IDEA, it specifically states a parent has a right to request an evaluation, just like anyone else in the building does. You have an equal right.
Is there a legal time limit too?
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. I was gonna get into that next. Okay, I've asked for my evaluation. I've clocked it in, meaning I brought it personally and watched them put it through the clock. There was a special clock in every special ed office, and it basically is a time clock. Because legally, from the date that's clocked to the date they have to do the meeting is 60 days. New York State is not a business day thing. I apologize. New York State is a daily thing, not a business day. So if you imagine that there is 60 days, we're talking about including weekends. And that, most people don't know. I apologize. It's probably someone trying to reach me.
Very soothing.
Thank you. It's better than the one for my husband. And I put it on, by the way, I put it on vibrate, so I don't know why it's playing. Okay, so 60 days, 60 calendar days. Now what happens if it's a holiday? Well, reality-wise, we don't hold to the 60th day if it's a real vacation. Most of the time you know that, over Christmas they're not going to be around, nobody's around, so you give them a little leeway. And the hearing officers will for those days. But in an average, 60 days means 60 days. And if they go past that 60 days, they're out of compliance. Because the word compliance is what means they have to follow by the law. Now, how many people actually follow that 60 days? How many districts actually follow it? Take a guess.
None.
No, that's true. I've had districts who do follow it and we're really good that way.
Non-compliance was a biggie.
Oh, it's a big issue. In every single district, there are problems. But the majority of the districts in Nassau County try to keep as close to the compliance date as possible. They are really the good ones, considering everything else. And they're not good, believe me. Do you know what it's like in New York City to get an evaluation in 60 days? Yeah, right. I didn't eat anything yet today. Sure. A 60-day evaluation in New York City, figure it's at least double. And they are out of compliance 90% of the time. So a parent in New York City, we complain about 60 days out here. A parent in New York City doesn't even have votes or choices because they tell them, oh no, we have extra time. Who told you that? I had one district tells me, and it's a district in Queens who told me, well, it's only 60 days if it's an inside evaluator. If it's an outside evaluator, we can't control that. If the parent requests at the meeting, when they first meet, or when they first requested, they're asking for speech and OT, and you can't get a speech and OT eval done in 60 days, there's a real problem. I don't know too many agencies that are that far behind. I know, because I deal with them all the time. It's a matter of whether you want to or not. Well, if you don't send out the request till after the 30th or 40th day, of course you're not going to get an eval in 60 days. That's part of the problem. Or even better, assistive technology. Are you familiar with assistive technology? I mean, obviously we use technology today very often. But a child who's struggling with handwriting, or who's struggling with eye problems, oculomotor, or has a difficulty seeing because he's got a visual issue, or even an auditory processing issue, is entitled to assistive technology. It could be as simple as an FM unit. Does anybody know what an FM unit is? I know you know.
Not included.
No, she is included, but I want to make sure that everyone is included. An FM unit is used to, the child would be wearing either a hearing aid or some kind of a unit in their ear, and the teacher has a mic to speak into, so the information is actually being put right into the child's ear so they can process it better. And that's used for hearing impairments as well as for auditory processing issues. And does anybody know what an auditory processing issue is? Because That's something that people don't realize is a very big issue with a lot of kids. Most people know about a visual issue, meaning they're having trouble reading, or dyslexia, right? You've heard of it before, right? When you're talking about an auditory processing issue, that's something that's a lot more recent, that has been determined to be another type of a disability, another type of a learning disability. If a person doesn't always auditorily, through the hearing system, gain every word that the person is saying, or it doesn't process the information that way, then that person is actually at a disadvantage because they're not getting the information that they're supposed to be getting. I have auditory processing issue. I didn't know what it was until about 10 years ago, because that's when I first started to become more aware. I never knew why I could not take directions if you told it to me. I didn't get it. You could write it to me and I would know the directions, no problem. But if you said it to me, I missed something, always. And I always got lost. So I learned about myself through one of the better providers who's here on Long Island. And she taught me that, hey, there are things you can do to be able to know. And ironically enough, I was already doing half of them without knowing it because I compensated, which is what a lot of our kids do. They learn a skill that they can work and live through life, and they go on. I compensated because I used to record every single class I took. And then I'd listen to it later, and I'd go back and forth because I couldn't do it the way most people did in a lecture hall. Imagine having 500 people in a lecture hall in a college. I didn't get it. But I finally found a great device, cassette device, that the professor would laugh at me when he'd put it down on the table, and he would say, no problem, go ahead, keep playing. Now that's really was an easy way to compensate. But I didn't even know I had a problem. I just knew that this was something I needed to do in order to learn. Years later, I learned, oh my gosh, I have an auditory processing issue. Just didn't know what it's called. And many kids don't always know why they're doing things or why they're having difficulties. They just know they are. And what we're here to do is give you the voice to help them make the difference. So, I gave you out these worksheets, because I really do want you to look at them. And I want you to call me if you have a question, because I have a rule. I never charge a parent for a question. They can call me at any time between the hours of 8 o'clock in the morning and 6 o'clock at night, and I will be happy to answer a question. And if I don't answer right away, I get back to you, because that's who I am. I'm one of the rare ones, and I know that. Get an attorney on the phone that way, yeah. So please, that's why I'm doing this. I'm not doing this because it's a job for me. If this was a job, I'd be getting paid a heck of a lot more. I do this because I care about the children. I care about what your child is able to do, and I care about how he's being treated in the district. And I don't mean he only, it's he or she. I care about how they're treating your child, and that whether your child is receiving the services they need. And I want to empower you to learn about the rules and how to get them to do it. Because that's part of what I do. Is I have a parent in Manhattan. She thanks me every week when she's helping another family to be able to do exactly what I've been doing with her for the last 5 years. She says, I learned so much from you. I didn't even know I was learning it. I said, because I was guiding you to know to do it yourself. That's what we call self-advocacy, to empower my parents to be able to handle it without me. Am I sad to lose a client? I never lose a client. Because basically they'll call me in and say, hi Min, how you doing? How's the kids? And 90% of the people I start out with as clients, I ended up with friends, because we're all in this together. This is a journey we're all taking. Whether your child has ADD, whether your child has autism, whether your child has whether your child has learning disabilities, it doesn't matter. We're all on a different type of journey. And my hope is that every parent becomes a captain of their own ship, because that makes the journey a lot better and a lot more empowering. So I hope that this has helped you to learn a little bit about the system. Obviously, there's no way to teach you the whole IDEA in one session, but if you have a question, if there's an issue that you think you want to just ask me, please ask me. That's what I'm here for. Thank you. Questions?
Just a quick question.
Sure.
Instead of medication, you mentioned holistic. Like, what kind of professionals do you contact for like holistic approach?
There are holistic endocrinologists. There are holistic medical doctors in Manhattan that are excellent. The one I used for years was Raphael Kelman, who I absolutely love. He is now very famous. It's hard to get an appointment, but he's really good. There's also a wellness center in Manhattan with Dana Cohen, Dr. Dana Cohen. These are MDs. These are not just NPs. These are not natural practitioners. These are medical doctors who have chosen to go a little bit out of the box. And because they've seen how some things don't work for kids or adults, and so they've chosen a different path of how to treat their patients. And I have to tell you, my son, who was in a BOCES class school because he couldn't control himself, went back to district after he took him off the meds and put him on, we had him on Serenity and grapeseed extract. I know I'm not telling you what to do for your child. I'm just saying what my son is taking. And since he started on those two alternative enzymes, my son is back in a regular class in the high school and getting his Regents diploma. So, yes, this year. So that's why I say it does work, and it depends on the child. Some meds work, some meds don't. Some holistic work, some holistic are not as effective. It's looking at the whole blood chemistry and understanding what this child really needs. Because they don't know enough about all these medications. They try their best, and they really do try. But it doesn't mean that everything is going to work, and it doesn't mean that everything's going to fail. I have a friend whose son has been taking Focalin, and he's doing great on Focalin, and that's wonderful. My son failed on it. So it's not that we didn't try, we did. We just couldn't stand the failures anymore, and we had to go someplace else.
So it's mostly in the city.
Yeah, there's two. There is one, however, in Huntington. I cannot think of his name. He is an interesting character. He is a thoracic doctor, but he does deal with kids and adults who have, as an alternative, he's become more holistic, but he's a medical doctor who's actually looking at the whole picture. And I cannot think of his name. If you call me, I will get you the name, because I have it in my file at home. But there are doctors out here that will look at the whole picture. And we network a lot. You know, Facebook has a lot of network for natural parents. I'm a huge essential oil mom. And I don't, part of the things that my son calms down on is every evening is a little lavender oil in the feed. Have you ever heard of that? Using the lavender oil before they go to sleep? Really works as a great natural sleep inducer. And it's not something that can harm them. Well, obviously, unless they have a reaction to the lavender, but that's not that often. There's a lot of things out there that are not, that the doctors don't always discuss or even look into. And I'll tell you something, I do not promote anything, but I tell you to look at the whole picture. If it's working for your child, excellent. But if it's not, look for other things. And don't think that it's going to be that alone. It could be a combination. We tried both. We found that just holistic worked best for my son. But that doesn't mean it's for every child. And I do not tell you not to give him medicines. That's not what I have. I had a kid in my class years ago. The minute he was off his Ritalin, I knew it. Ritalin worked for him. And it was wonderful for this child. The second he didn't have enough pills in the house, I knew exactly when Mom ran out. Had to have a certain amount of days before she'd go to the doctor. I knew that very well. I also knew when he said to me one morning that he cannot come into school tomorrow because he's running out. And I said to him, well, what about trying some oil? Because I've been an oiler for a long time. I said, you can do it yourself. I can't put it on you, but if you want to try a little lavender, when you first walk into the classroom, maybe it will keep you calm. Not only did it keep him calm, he had the best day ever without the Ritalin. And the parent called me up and said to me, "What did you give him?" I said, "I didn't give him anything." I said, I have oils for me. He asked me if he could try it. I said, "Sure, no problem. It's not gonna harm him." I said, "But I would not give it to him." She looked at me and she said to me, "Thank you. It worked." She started buying the oils. So you don't know.
Is that also like CBD oils?
CBD, I don't use CBD oil. My son did. My son has Crohn's disease.
Okay.
And so CBD oil helped him, but he also used other oils. I'm a Young Living person. I'm not trying to sell. That's not what I'm here for. But I use the oils myself for my family, and I find it is a phenomenal thing. My son used to have problems with teething, and I'm telling you because I know you're gonna have that issue soon. My son started teething at 7 weeks old.
Oh my God.
Yes, I'm sorry. And I was nursing. And I have to tell you, a little lavender oil, a little peppermint oil really made a difference, and it can't hurt. One of the doctors said to me, "Oh, no, that's okay. That's not something that can harm them." I used to put it on the bottom of their feet. As long as it didn't ingest it, it can't harm them.
I heard lavender for reproductive system, though, for boys is an issue, no?
I don't use lavender anywhere. You use the lavender in the nerve endings. You don't use lavender if on a prepubescent, if they're getting close to that age.
Okay.
You don't use lavender.
Okay.
I would use there's a lot of others that can be used. There's one of them that I use with.
'Cause he's on the
my son.
cusp, so I have to be careful. You know, that I've just always been, my sister just said, be careful, and that's how I knew.
Honestly, there's a lot of different things that people have said, be careful.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how often, it depends on what you're using, and it depends on what you're mixing, because that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
If you don't know enough, read first. That's the way I always did. And I had to learn, because my son's Crohn's is what caused me to look into it really heavily. He was diagnosed when he was 5, and I did not want him to only take medication. We were trying to find alternatives, because inflammation in Crohn's can be a lifelong problem, and he became very resistant to prednisone. So in my situation, I had to find another alternative, and we did. We found 2 different things. Crazy. I mean,
What were the 2
networking.
things? I'm so curious.
Nettle root powder
Okay.
that grows on the side of the road in England. It also grows on the side of the road here in America, but they don't think to use it. They actually break it up into a powder and put it into capsules, and it is nature's best anti-inflammatory. The second one we use is moringa. You ever heard of the moringa fruit? The moringa fruit can be also powdered and made into capsules. So there's lots of different things. That's probably my son trying to call. Lots of different things. By the way, ADHD, to a T. Waiting, please. If it's not this immediate, you can't, Yeah, I laugh about it most of the time now. I didn't always when I was in the middle of a hearing and the phone starts to ring 3-4 times, and I shut it off, and he found a way to open it. He's an electronic genius.
Yeah.
Other than that, So, but that's what I said. Different things. I had to find alternatives because my son couldn't take the regular traditional medicines. He is on Remicade, so I'm not just using the natural. And it's just what it is. It's what works for your child. The most important thing that works is you. Keep yourself knowledgeable. Learn what you can. Ask the questions. And don't accept when they say we can't do it. Because when they're trying to say is we can't afford it. They're not saying they can't. Because legally, if there's something out there that they can do that they're not doing, you have the right to find out what it is and to get it for your child. And New York State is the best place to do it. And make sure you get your reports. That's so vital. Make sure you get it before the meetings. Also, and it's really important, make sure you read them If you don't understand them, ask someone who does. Don't accept the word of just your school psychologist, because they're saying it in a way that they want you to interpret it. Ask someone else. Could you look it over with me? And most people will say, sure, no problem, I take a look at it every day. I mean, make a phone call. I will be happy to answer the questions, because that's part of what I do, is answer a lot of questions. I have to tell you, I love it. Go ahead.
Question. There was a point where a friend of mine's child was referred to the social worker and not the school psychologist, and she couldn't give a reason why. Why do they do that?
Social workers are the less
So they said they were
high up on
too
the totem.
busy, or she
Right.
couldn't get her sent in. So what do you do about that?
And why would they call in? For counseling, you mean?
To
Or
see her
intervention?
son, every week, and to have a common person. So that's what the school
Usually
said to
the
her?
social workers are the first contact, I know. And once the social worker is unable to handle that particular child, no matter who the child is, then usually they'll refer it to the next level up, which is the school psychologist. Most school psychologists are not clinical psychologists. They're just mainly for testing. And most people don't realize that. They're not licensed
What if they have their
counselors
masters and they're not
in
right?
school psychology, unless they have, even with the masters, they're getting it in school psychology, which is mostly evaluations. They're not getting it unless they have an LC license. They're not licensed counselors. And most people don't realize that. In order to get a licensed counselor, you need to have that LC in New York State, and a large number of hours. Social workers, in order to be able to practice, have that LC. So that's why the social worker is a better choice for counseling. It's someone who's been trained in counseling. School psychologists are not, unless they have their LC. So people are not aware of that. They assume because it says psychologist that it's a psychologist. It's not. And most people don't know that.
You don't know.
Any more
Doctor
questions?
sounds important.
Does OPWDD help kids with ADHD, or is it just more severe?
OPWDD means Office of People with Developmental Disabilities. That means for intellectually disabled, for autism. There are several other categories that would be automatically accepted. ADHD is not one of them unless they have another classification in addition. So if their intelligence is average, they would not be eligible under OPWDD.
No matter what the diagnosis is.
If the diagnosis has a dual diagnosis, possibly, but it depends on the diagnosis. Okay, just an ADHD diagnosis is not going to get you OPWDD, unfortunately. There are other things out there, but not OPWDD. And that, by the way, that's called the Office of Mental Health that you would have to go through, not OPW. Because that would be the next level, like comparable. Anybody? No? Yes? Maybe? Well, please, I hope you take these home and look them over. I hope you call me if you have a question.
What's your number?
It's on the flyer. I made sure to write it on the flyer, and it says it. My number is 917-282-0025. Please feel free to call. Okay? Have a good night.
Hi, I am Joe Futerman. I am a member of CHADD of Nassau County. I am on the executive board. I have been involved with the organization for close to 10 years now. I probably started about 8 years ago. I started as a volunteer facilitating the adult support group and occasionally spoke and led workshops at the monthly meetings. I was also served as the coordinator of the chapter for approximately 4 or 5 years, and remained on the board after I gave up that position. I remained on the board, and I'm still on the executive board, and I continue to facilitate the adult support group. I am a certified life coach. I have a practice on Long Island. Much of my work is done remotely, so I have clients really all over the country. I specialize in ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I work with adults, many of whom deal with the challenges often associated with ADHD. Planning, prioritizing, organizing, time management, focus. And I work with the client to develop strategies to make life a little bit easier, to improve the quality of their life, and to develop some change in behaviors that perhaps just make life a little bit easier. I am also a certified meditation teacher. I started meditating over 10 years ago, and I continue with the daily practice. Meditation and mindfulness are an integral part of my coaching practice. I believe that it is the foundation. Mindfulness is certainly the foundation for all positive change. And generally it's behaviors that we're looking to change or develop new ones, and it certainly is important to be mindful of what we are doing. Most of our day we spend in autopilot mode, and mindfulness takes us out of autopilot so that we can be more present and more aware. And with that awareness comes choice. We then get to choose, do I want to do this or do I want to do that? So for me, mindfulness, the mindfulness practice, again, is an integral part of the work that I do with my clients. I am very happy to be offering to members of CHADD, it's exclusive for our membership, monthly meditation classes, free monthly meditation classes. I did this last year. For 1 month, I did several each week, and it was so well received and really made such a positive impact that I've decided to continue with this and offer this service once a month, and that will be starting in October. So I hope to see you at our meetings. I hope to see you. The monthly meditation workshops that I'm offering are by phone. So you can call in. You can do this from the comfort of your home or the comfort of your office, and it's call in, and we will have a discussion around mindfulness, around meditation, and also do a meditation practice. So I'm really excited about that, and I hope that you will join us at our meetings. Thank you.
Please check us out at Nassau-County at chadd.net.
Yay!